History remembers leaders in extremes, heroes or villains, champions or tyrants. But what of those who defy such simple labels? Men whose legacies are etched in contradictions, whose actions stirred both admiration and outrage. One such figure was John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, a man of towering intellect, fierce principles, and a political career that would forever divide opinion. To understand the man, we must journey back to the very foundations of his life, where ambition and duty were seared into his soul from childhood. Born in 1767, John Quincy Adams entered the world as the son of a founding father, John Adams, the fiery patriot who would become America's 2nd president. But this was no ordinary childhood. While other boys played, young John Quincy was thrust into the heart of revolution. "I am but a boy, yet I have seen the birth of a nation. The fires of war burn around me, and my father's voice echoes in my ears. Duty above all." At just 10 years old, he accompanied his father to Europe, serving as his secretary. He walked the halls of power in Paris, London, and St. Petersburg, absorbing languages, politics, and diplomacy like a sponge. By 14, he was fluent in French and Dutch. By 17, he was translating for American diplomats. The weight of expectation was crushing, but Adams bore it without complaint. Harvard sharpened his mind, but politics called his name. By his mid-20s, he was already a seasoned diplomat, appointed by President Washington himself. His mission? To prove that the young United States could stand among the empires of Europe. Adams was brilliant, yes, but also rigid, uncompromising. He despised the games of flattery and deception that defined European diplomacy, and yet he excelled. His negotiation of the Treaty of Ghent in 1814 ended the War of 1812, securing America's survival against Britain once more. But peace abroad would soon give way to stormy seas at home. For Adams, the presidency loomed, a destiny he both desired and dreaded. The election of 1824 was a political earthquake. 4 men vied for the presidency, and when the dust settled, no one had won a majority. The decision fell to the House of Representatives, and behind closed doors, a deal was struck. When Adams named Henry Clay as his Secretary of State, Andrew Jackson's supporters cried foul. "Corrupt bargain," they roared. The stain of this accusation would haunt Adams for the rest of his life. And so, John Quincy Adams entered the White House under a cloud of controversy. A man of principle, now branded a schemer. But his greatest battles were yet to come, and when those battles came, they would redefine his legacy forever. The weight of the presidency is heavy, but for John Quincy Adams, it was more than a burden. It was a torment. Elected under a cloud of controversy, his every move would be scrutinized, his every decision challenged. This was a presidency doomed from the start. The year was 1825. The United States stood at a crossroads. Would it embrace progress or cling to tradition? Adams had a vision, but vision in politics is often met with vicious resistance. From the very first day, Adams faced hostility. He had not won the popular vote. He had not even won the electoral vote outright. His victory came from the House of Representatives, a backroom deal that left half the nation furious. Andrew Jackson, the man who had won the most votes, watched from the crowd, his eyes burning with betrayal. He would not forget this insult, and he would make sure the American people didn't either. Adams knew his presidency was fragile, yet instead of courting favor, he doubled down on his principles, risking everything for the future he believed in. His plans were breathtaking: a national university, a network of roads and canals binding the country together, astronomical observatories to unlock the secrets of the stars. Adams dreamed of an America that led the world in knowledge, infrastructure, and progress. But Congress laughed. To them, these were the fantasies of an out-of-touch intellectual. States' rights advocates saw tyranny in federal projects. Southerners feared Northern dominance. And Jackson's allies? They blocked him at every turn. "I am a man of reserved, cold, austere, and forbidding manners. My political adversaries set me down as a gloomy misanthropist." He was not wrong. Adams lacked the charm to win over enemies. He refused to play the political game, and so his grand vision withered, one crushing defeat at a time. Then came the final blow, the Tariff of 1828. Designed to protect Northern industry, it enraged the South, where imported goods were vital. They called it the Tariff of Abominations, and it would push the nation closer to civil war. Even Adams' own vice president, John C. Calhoun, turned against him, plotting the doctrine doctrine of nullification, the idea that states could defy federal law.
The cracks in the Union were widening, and Adams stood helpless in the middle. By 1828, his fate was sealed. Andrew Jackson, the people's champion, would have his revenge. The election was a massacre. Adams lost in a landslide. On March 4th, 1829, John Quincy Adams left the White House, a defeated man. His dreams for America lay in ruins. His enemies rejoiced. History, it seemed, would remember him as a failure. But Adams was not finished. Not even close. Because what came next would shock the nation. Most presidents fade into history when they leave office. But John Quincy Adams, he did something unprecedented. He returned. Not as an elder statesman offering quiet counsel, but as a congressman, a firebrand, a man who would become the most dangerous voice in American politics. This was no ceremonial role. This was war. And Adams, he was just getting started. After his crushing defeat, Adams could have retired. He could have written his memoirs, tended his garden, and slipped quietly from public life. But that wasn't in his nature. When his district offered him a seat in the House of Representatives, he took it. Not as a consolation prize, but as a second chance. And this time, he would answer to no one. Free from the constraints of the presidency, Adams unleashed his fury. He became a one-man crusade against corruption, injustice, and the greatest moral stain on the nation, slavery. For years, Southern lawmakers had imposed a gag rule, banning any discussion of slavery in Congress. They wanted silence. Adams, he wanted a fight. Am I gagged? No. I will speak. I will be heard. Day after day, he forced the issue. He read petitions from enslaved people. He named names. He baited his enemies into furious outbursts, exposing the brutality of the system they defended. They tried to censure him. They threatened him. But Adams, the old diplomat, had become something far more dangerous. A man with nothing to lose. Then came the case that would define his legacy. The Amistad, a ship of enslaved Africans who had risen up against their captors. Captured and put on trial, their fate now rested in the hands of the Supreme Court and the aging congressman who agreed to defend them. He hadn't practiced law in decades. His voice sometimes faltered, but when he rose to speak, something extraordinary happened. I stand before this court not as an advocate, but as a man pleading for the eternal principles of justice. For 8 hours, he argued. He invoked the Declaration of Independence. He shamed the hypocrisy of a nation that called itself free. And when the verdict came, the Africans were declared free. It was his greatest victory, and it would not be his last. Even as his body failed him, Adams refused to yield. On February 21st, 1848, during yet another debate over slavery, he suffered a stroke. They carried him to the Speaker's office, where he lingered for 2 days. His last words were said to be, "This is the last of earth. I am content." But the fight he began, that was far from over. Because John Quincy Adams had ignited something, a fire that would consume the nation in civil war and ultimately burn slavery to ashes. History demands simple verdicts, hero or villain, success or failure. But the pages of John Quincy Adams' diary reveal a man perpetually at war with himself, a president who failed to move a nation, yet a congressman who helped change its course, a man who fought slavery while never fully embracing equality. These are the contradictions that make him one of our most fascinating leaders. As president, Adams envisioned an America connected by canals and enlightened by national universities. He dreamed of standardized weights and measures, of exploration and scientific advancement. These weren't just policies, they were the foundation stones of a modern nation. But America in 1825 wasn't ready for a philosopher king. His refusal to play political games, his cold demeanor, even his morning skinny dips in the Potomac became weapons for his enemies. The tragedy? Many of his ideas would later transform America under other presidents' names. Here lies the central paradox. The man who became Congress's most ferocious anti-slavery voice never joined the abolitionist movement. He believed slavery was morally repugnant, yet thought immediate emancipation would cause chaos. You speak of our freedom, but will you sit with us, break bread with us? For all his moral courage, Adams struggled to see Black Americans as true equals. His fight was constitutional, not social. Yet without his relentless pressure, the abolitionist movement might never have gained traction. The same uncompromising nature that made him a political martyr devastated his family. His eldest son, George, succumbed to alcoholism and likely suicide. Another son, John, failed spectacularly in business. Only Charles would survive his father's crushing expectations. His wife, Louisa, the only foreign-born first lady of the 19th century, endured his absences and depressive silences. In his diaries, he recorded congressional votes in meticulous detail, but rarely his wife's illnesses or children's struggles. In his final, fiery decade, this aristocratic intellectual became something extraordinary, a champion for common workers. He fought for the 10-hour workday, defended unions, even supported women's right to petition Congress, radical for his time. The man who failed to connect as president now found his voice, not in lofty ideals, but in the gritty realities of Americans' daily lives. The patrician had become, improbably, a people's tribune. Today we live in the America Adams helped imagine, though not the one he built. Our national roads trace his vision. Our moral debates echo his battles. Even our political divisions reflect the tensions he embodied, between elite expertise and popular will, between gradual reform and radical change. Perhaps his greatest lesson lies in his resilience, that defeat need not be final, that even flawed men can grow, and that the most consequential chapters of a life may come after the world stops watching. Statues are meant to simplify history, to freeze complex men in marble perfection. But look closer at this one, and you'll see the cracks, the weathering of time, just like the legacy of the man it represents. 8 years after Adams' death, as America teetered towards civil war, a gangly Illinois lawyer studied his speeches. Lincoln would later call Adams the iron rod of principle, the proof that one stubborn voice could bend history's arc. The abolition Adams championed won on bloody battlefields. The national infrastructure he envisioned built under Lincoln's watch. Even his controversial ideas about federal power became the blueprint for preserving the Union. And when Martin Luther King Jr. stood where Adams once fought for petitions to be heard, the thread became clear. Some battles span centuries. Today, Adams haunts our politics like a restless ghost. The tension between expertise and populism, the distrust of compromise, the weaponization of congressional procedure, Adams lived it all. His failures teach us that brilliant policies mean nothing without political skill. His late career resurgence proves that persistence can outlast any defeat. Here lies his true masterpiece, not laws or treaties, but words. 50 years of unfiltered thoughts, from teenage ambassadorial missions to his final congressional battles. More than any president before him, Adams left us the messy truth, the doubts, the hypocrisies, the slow evolution of a man and a nation. In an age of soundbite politics, Adams reminds us that real change requires both vision and stamina. That moral clarity can emerge late, that losing the presidency doesn't mean losing your voice. The boy who watched the revolution became the old man who helped prevent another one. And in that journey, from privileged heir to populist warrior, lies hope for all of us. John Quincy Adams' greatest lesson? That legacies aren't written in single terms or dramatic victories, but in the stubborn accumulation of days when you choose principle over popularity. In the end, history remembers not just what we achieve, but what we refuse to let stand. He was right.